goal is to introduce best practices from one setting to another and to see if it can actually improve education around the world. I got tangled up is the right term, I think, with Boland Math, which is a project which tried to introduce really innovative problem-solving resources about a decade ago. For those of you who don't know what Boland Math is, you saw Chloe's material class, that was Boland Math. You heard Sheila talk about that car sharing thing. That was originally Boland Math adopted by Nottingham University for the American audience. So you can see it's a real world, rich context, open-ended generally problems that we hoped to make kids more excited. It was really targeted to Key Stage 3, because that's when most of the kids lose interest in math. It becomes a bit boring, algebraic, and abstract. You know, what is this for? So Boland Math was trying to really bring back the real-world context. Why is it important to do all this? So that's what Boland Math was about. In a context of developing Boland Math materials, I actually visited Japanese experts, thinking that actually they might like to contribute a problem or two. They're supposed to be very good in problem-solving teaching. And they all said, oh, no, you go back to Shell Centre. You go back to Nottingham. You go back to King's College. England is very, very good for problem-solving. That's what they said. So I said, okay, never mind. I came back. And when we, Boland Math, with all these experts, actually created all these resources and made it available open on the web, the Japanese people saw them and said, this is exactly what we want. We want to see them in action. So they started visiting England. This is when I got tangled up, because I had to then create a little delegation to visit Dominic's school, who then had to have about 6, 7 of us visiting your classroom, which was at the time quite surprising, really, for a teacher to suddenly get 8 people sort of in your classroom observing. And that was really the starting. So that's who I am. I am sort of been tangled up in a process with the Impulse, which is a project in Japan that has been trying to introduce an authentic version of lesson study in the world. And Nottingham University, where I'm the visitor at the moment. I'm not a proper academic, I'm a visitor there. So I'm just going to talk about what's problem solving, what is problem solving, why is it important. But the teaching problem solving is not easy, hence what to do, which is the answer is lesson study. And what is lesson study? Why is it important? And I just hope to end to show that lesson study is a key mechanism for teachers to learn, but for you to become also the professional community with each other. This is a standard definition that Malcolm would refer to. A problem is a task that an individual wants to achieve, but for which he or she does not have access to a straightforward means of a solution. So obviously a problem that is a problem for an 8-year-old is it might be a very simple problem for us. It's all relative where you are. And why is problem solving important? In most of the maths education conference I've attended, they start saying, oh, because it's a curriculum, the exams are assessing it. I just want to say that's not the point. The point is the real world around you is craving for it. The problem solvers is exactly what the world is looking for. I mean, it doesn't take much imagination. If you look around the world is complex, there's fighting going on, there's all sorts of environmental issues, scientific problems. We need problem solvers. We really do. And math is a key element of that ability to solve problems. And that is what the real world is saying to you. The governments are beginning to say that, but they're pretty inept. They're politicians, they don't know how to do it. They often devise exams that don't actually measure problem solving because experts, frankly, haven't got a clue how to really measure it either. It's a fairly complex field still. So I just want to make a plea. At the moment, curriculum may be quite interested in problem solving. Maybe in 3 years' time, they'll forget about it. They might just go back to the content-based things. But don't forget, the real world is looking to you, mathematicians, to teach problem solving, because that's what the world needs. I wanted to say something about the UK math. Malcolm has been mentioned several times. I mean, he was a real leading light, and actually he's still got a group which is a leading light in Nottingham. I mean, you're very fortunate to have Enrich. No other country has that kind of resource, really, close to you. So you've got experts in this country, and you know, this country is leading in that way. But do I see that it's a real strength in UK maths today? No, I don't see that. It's sort of scattered. So I hope that's why it's just a sort of sadly part. It's sort of neglected, and I do hope that the UK would restore that, because I would think that this would be the best practice that you could present to the world. Now at the moment it's not only a periodic focus, and I was talking to a Nottingham expert about half a year ago, who was saying that you see the new ones not quite going far enough. So, you know, we'll see how that emphasis comes and goes. But I just want to say, for the last time, I won't say it again, but the real world needs it, so it will come back. If it goes away, it will come back. So this is this quote from OECD report. There's almost consensus mathematical problems appropriate for the 21st century should be complex, unfamiliar, and non-routine. The time has come to introduce innovative. I mean, you can read the rest. But that's the rhetoric that is actually quite common amongst the practitioners outside of the education world, outside of the politics. But problem solving is not easy to achieve. I think we all know that. I mean, we saw Chloe, and I was really worried that maybe Chloe would scare the rest of the group away, thinking, my God, it is difficult. And it is difficult. But that's why it's important for the teachers to learn, and teachers ought to be the best learners in the world, really, oughtn't they? The reasons I listed there, I think you know it. I'm not going to dwell on it. But the Japanese answer to that complexity really was to use lesson study. When they recognized the importance of problem solving for learning, the math education community really introduced problem solving through lesson study. And today, I have to say, the primary math is really largely based on problem solving. Now, if Sheila looks at it, she would say it's a bounded, what did you call it? Defined version. They use the problems that has a closed answer, and they use it to teach content as opposed to necessarily teach problem solving. So, but even that was quite difficult. They have had traditionally the problem of not having that much problem-solving emphasis at the secondary level because of the exams. The exams really distorted the incentives for teachers to cram, basically. And so there is now a renewed emphasis at that level to change exams and to introduce more of a problem-solving kind of thinking approach. So what is lesson study? I think most of you I have spoken to have told me that you have seen a version at least of lesson study or heard of it. But I do have to say that there are lots of different versions. And so there is a version that Matt and I and Sheila and Chloe and David, I mean a number of us in this room are working with, which is called the impulse version. We like to think of it as an authentic version, but actually even within Japan there are probably multiple versions. So we better stick to just saying that it's an impulse. And how is that different? It's got a very focused objective, research objective. You saw Chloe's worksheet, and it had two research objectives, really focused. It's not just generally studying how can you teach better. No, it's about how to do something specific better. It's joint planning, not just one afternoon, just casually talking, but in detailed way, very specific and detailed. Selecting, adapting teaching materials, anticipating student responses, thinking hard and investing an awful lot. And this is a part that most of the school leadership might see and say, oh, that's a lot of time wasted, that's quite time intensive. But actually, that's investment. That's the reason why you can learn a heck of a lot if you did that homework. And then you have a research lesson we observed jointly, and that observed lesson becomes the topic for joint learning. And there's a post-lesson discussion for reflection. And usually, you can have sort of school-based lesson studies, but at the key junctures where you really want to learn, you invite external expert. And in our case, it was Dominic, who actually played a multiple role today, I have to say, because he actually provided quite detailed advice right at the outset when we started planning. So his views, we learned an awful lot, didn't we, at the start? And so he played a dual role of providing advice in planning as well as in trying to summarize, which is a gigantic task. Thank you for that, Dominic. But this high-level study involving external experts means that schools are linked to knowledge community. So Chloe's lesson study talked about Sheila's work, which is ongoing work. Okay, she's got some publications, but it's not run-of-the-mill stuff that Chloe would be reading every day. But because this particular instance, we were involving several other people from the outside, not me, Matt and Dominic, she was introduced to key literature and key concepts, including the idea of having, designing a student response. And that's the value of powerful lesson study, that you're not just sitting around in a corner of the school, just worrying about what to do, but you're linking yourself to a better community, knowledgeable in every aspect. So that summarizes our version. You can see a little logo on the left top, which is called Collaborative Lesson Research, Teachers as Learners. There's a launch conference next week for this group of us, guerrilla group, which includes Matt, Sheila, and myself, who have bought into this approach and who think that this can do something. So we are going to be disseminating things like newsletters, there will be more conferences, there will be more workshops, opportunities, and possibly other lesson study events that you can attend. And now that you're here, I think you're a captive audience. You'll receive emails from us in the future. So lesson study is excellent for professional teacher development. It's also important for institutional development. It can professionalize departmental education. I'm going to come back to that in a minute because I think that's a good example coming up in a minute. Linking schools to external experts we talked about. Disseminating innovative teaching. I mean, you saw Chloe, that's quite powerful to have seen, be able to see. So the idea is having these opportunities, sporadic opportunities, to be able to be exposed to who is doing new ways of teaching. And it can also improve teaching materials. So Boland has learned a heck of a lot from observing these teachers teaching these lessons. Impact of problem-solving approach in Japan. So I mentioned excellent teaching in primary schools, and that really has helped them be sort of proud of the fact that the students understand things at a deeper level. They feel application, they can apply things a lot better. But as I said, they still think that they haven't done enough. And interestingly enough, one of the schools where we were working had a class 6 who participated in Boland lesson study, sort of like work. And the students did outstandingly well, much better than anybody from any other schools. It's not sort of structured research, so I can't quite disseminate in that way, but the analysis that those of us who are insiders came up with was the fact that this particular class had done much better than the others because they started doing slightly more open-ended problems from class 1, grade 1, year 1. For one reason or another, this class had a teacher who had worked with Keiichi, this Japanese expert, who believed in this open-ended approach. So they started injecting this sort of slightly more open-ended, not the closed-ended problem-solving that the Japanese are used to, slightly open-ended stuff. And the class, I wish that I could show you the result. It's all in Japanese, so I didn't bring it, but they were incredibly good out-of-box thinkers and really fast in ability to adapt new things that they learned. We were amazed. They were learning something about a new topic, and next month they were able to apply that sort of speed. So I think there's something to be said for starting early. So I'm really happy that a lot of primary audience is here today. Impact of lesson study. This is from the Boland lesson study project that I think several of you have talked about. Jackie was there, Dominic was there, Matt was there. I'm probably missing several people. But the people have said quite a lot of positive things. Has had more impact than all my previous CPD combined. I have a feeling that might have been you, Jackie. But it was also visible in teaching. We had 3 cycles, only 3 cycles in 1 year. So teachers, not 3 cycles that you teach, but 1 cycle you teach, next cycle you plan, third cycle you plan sort of together. And there was a teacher in Birmingham who, at the end of that cycle, came to be interviewed in London for a job in London, the new school. And she had to give a class in that new school. And one of the observers happened to have been also a Boland lesson study project participant. And she thought, oh, she really teaches like Boland. So she observed without knowing the fact that this Birmingham teacher had been part of the Boland lesson study. So it can change your practice quite powerfully. It's not just that single lesson, it's more generic. I think you talked, a lot of you are talking about questioning, how you question differently to students. It's that sort of thing, It really can change your everyday practice. It also focuses on classroom and student learning. A lot of teachers said, oh, we haven't thought about students at this level of depth in a long time. It's a bit sad, isn't it? Impact on development in schools to create professional dialogue. Oh yeah, I missed out on that comment about brought the department together. This was another Birmingham school where teachers felt that through lesson study planning, they were able to begin to have a professional dialogue with each other. And actually, one of the governors of that school said, this lesson study project really changed that department. That it was just a department of individuals before. At the end of it, it was a professional team of people who were able to communicate with each other. So it's not just individuals that learn, you learn to communicate with each other. So potential. Japanese head teacher, I interviewed several Japanese head teachers. What do they say? It's definitely a tool to develop individual teachers, but it's also a mechanism to explore and develop methods to teach new skills and new themes of knowledge. So when the curriculums change, when emphasis change, how on earth what do you do? Change your practice, for instance, to introduce thinking, critical thinking. Lesson studies can be a wonderful mechanism for the whole school to explore. What does it mean to teach critical thinking? One of them at least said it was also a managerial device to bring the school community together to work towards a common goal. A lot of Japanese schools have a common goal of improvement, and lesson study sort of is conducted school-wide for that purpose. Several of them also said that there's a mechanism for accountability, to opening up the classroom to the community, to show what it is like. So some of the public lesson study days, parents are welcome, community is welcome, anybody can participate. And it sort of brings in the openness to classrooms. I think I've talked about Boland. So final words, just 3 things. Don't forget the problem solving is important, not for curriculum, but for the real world. Lesson study is arguably the best instrument for really learning how to do this better. And it will help professionalization of the community with the powerful links to the knowledge centers. Thank you.